아들, 너 왜 밖에 누워서 그러고 있냐?
자식밖에 안 덥나?
이게 집에 누워서 하늘 보고 있는 거거든. 되게 좋아.
엄마도 물 줄까?
기정아,
물 하나 줄까?
텔레파시 땡큐.
Hello and welcome to the RC Cinema Podcast. I'm here, Ryan Fitzgerald and Chris Hickey. We have another movie for you here this week, and we got quite a doozy. We got many layers to peel back with this one. I think we got our work cut out for us on this one, Chris. Bong Joon Ho's Parasite. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited to do this one. When this came out, I actually went and saw it before it was released in full theaters through a screening with, and I had seen it 4 times in theaters and then about 2 more times when it moved to streaming. It's a great movie, and it's the first movie to win Best Picture and Best Foreign Film ever at the Oscars, and that just attests to the power of this film. And I think that it's such an interesting, piece, and Bong Joon Ho is such a unique director because he plays with the camera, he plays with the scenarios, he plays with the scenes, and it's magical what he can do and how neatly and yet how chaotically he can create such an intense world in all of his films.
Yeah.
And specifically Parasite.
Yeah, I mean, I think Bong is a director that he sees all his tools laid out in front of him, and he's like, well, why wouldn't I just use every single one of them? He's like, well, if that's available to me, then why wouldn't I use that? If I could do this, then why wouldn't I do that? He kind of like lays everything out. It's like, oh, I'm gonna play with the sound here, and I'm gonna do like a weird shot here, and like the makeup and the effects here are gonna be like different. He really takes everything that he can, and he uses everything, and he uses it so well. He's like, it's really funny because in America, I feel like we didn't fully appreciate him until very recently. I mean, I might only be speaking for myself, but this is not the first of his films that I had seen. I had seen Snowpiercer and I had seen Okja before this, and both of them are quite good. And the first time I watched Okja, I didn't really like it. And I rewatched it and I was like, oh, it kind of grows on you after a while. That's another film that's very much about class. This guy loves talking about class and the separations and how to move up in it and down in it. This is like his main subject for most of his movies, but yeah.
I mean, I think it's basically all I think it's the biggest theme that we see throughout all of his films. I think that's the story he wants to tell as a creator, as a director. I think he finds clever ways to create completely new and different worlds and imaginative situations, but still is able to have this structural classism that continues and resonates throughout this whole film and throughout all of his films. I think the many layers that go into each of his films are fascinating, and I think that he finds a way to exploit class in such an enticing way. I mean, you have so many different ways. I mean, we talk, I had not known too much about Bong. I'd seen Okja, and I think that was it. So I hadn't seen Snowpiercer. I actually just watched that for the first time because we were doing this Parasite thing. But and then when it's very interesting because I don't think we have a director that's so detail oriented towards telling a story about class. And I think he's very fascinating, very fascinating.
Yeah, and the thing is like, and I had mentioned this to you earlier about, I watched this Vanity Fair interview that he did where he broke down like the first scene in Parasite. It was the first, like, basically like two scenes, if you really want to call it that, but really it's one whole scene, and it's the beginning of the movie when you see them folding boxes, and you see Ki Woo talk to his friend who brings him the stone, and it's funny because, like, it really feels like he really wants you to understand, like, he wants the actors to fully understand what he's trying to get across during the film. It really feels like he's like a teacher, or he's like, he wants to figure out what the best way for him to get across a point is, because he feels that if I'm not even getting this point across to the actor that I'm directing right now, how is the audience member going to get what I'm trying to say?
I think not only that, but also I think he wants to teach to people, so they don't just go, and I've seen him in interviews as well, and it seems like he cares about showing people, telling people to look past just the movie, to look past just sitting in a movie theater watching a movie, getting in the story, but to see what goes into it. And I think you're right on that, very much.
Yeah, it really felt like, so he did what with the interview, he did it with Choi Woo-shik, who plays Ki Woo, and it was funny because when he was like breaking certain things down, or he would like circle certain things, he would be like, "Oh, why do you think I did this? Why do you," like, he would just stand back, and it was kind of funny because he was just like, he had clearly been doing presser stuff like all day, and he was kind of like, "Oh, like, here, you just kind of like take this. I know because we've talked about this already. Like, go ahead and talk about what I'm trying to get across." It would be funny. I mean, it must be like great to work with him on set. I can only imagine, like, working with him. He must be he must be a very, very demanding person. You know what I mean? But like in a good way, because like, sometimes the most difficult people to work with at times are the best, and the most genius in that way. And I feel like Chris Evans on Snowpiercer could have been getting like frustrated and everything like that, being like, "Oh, I never have to do any of this for like a Marvel movie, and those are like multi-million-dollar projects." But I feel like but at the end of the day, this is a Bong Joon Ho movie, and there's a reason, there's a distinction between one and the other. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Regardless of him being an action star,
Yeah, I completely agree. And I mean, I think that he's very meticulous about what he's trying to portray. I think he knows what he wants for his story and exactly, what he needs. And he leaves a little room for freedom and creativity. But I think that he has his story. He wants to tell it. And this is how he's going to tell it. He's one of those directors. But I also think he wants the actors, the audience, the crew, whoever, to learn, to see, to be exposed to what he's thinking. It's not necessarily for him or because he has this great idea that he does this, but I think it's because he knows the story he wants to tell and he knows how to tell it. I think he's a demanding director, I imagine, and from what I've seen in interviews, from what I've read, from what I can see on how he shoots and films his movies. But I think that he also wants to impede and convey the points and the story and the decisions that all go into what he's making, what he's doing. And I think that there's a separation of being a director who has his way and wants to remain, on that track. I have this story. This is my story. Here's how I'm going to tell it. And this is what you're going to do. And your job as an actor, your job as a crew member, your job as an audience is to see the way I want to tell it. But I don't think that's necessarily what Bong Joon Ho wants to do. I think he knows what he wants to tell, yes. I think he has the story he wants to tell, yes. I think he's pretty adamant on what he wants to do with it, but I think that there is always more to the picture than just that. I think that he is trying to convey what he says and hopefully put the people in his viewpoint, in his eyes.
Mm-hmm. Well, something very interesting that I found out that I think you would find interesting is that originally Parasite, he did not intend to film it. He actually wanted to make it a play where you would just have two houses on the stage side by side with each other,
Wow,
which would be so interesting. I mean, I could totally see this playing out as a play very easily.
100%.
You know, this could very easily go to stage. You know what I mean? I feel like Bong's probably a little too busy with the Snowpiercer show at this point. You know,
who knows? But maybe one day it will be.
Maybe one day he'll make his way to Broadway.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. That would be extremely interesting. I could see. I mean, hey man, if you want to make some money, you know, there's ways to do it here in America, and I'm sure the stage will happily accept Bong for sure.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
so we should just get right into this movie. You know, stop talking about it and start really talking about it.
Yeah, definitely. And for that, I think we're gonna go ahead and the thing I want to bring up is how we're introduced to this family.
Mm-hmm.
How we're introduced to the whole film, essentially. And we're going to show this clip. This is the beginning clip, the introduction clip to the film. Yeah, and so we'll come back and talk about that in a second.
망했다 이거.
So that clip is, it's really cool, isn't it, Ryan? I mean, you have this opening shot of this tiny basement window. In the film, they refer to their apartment as a semi-basement, meaning it's not fully submerged underground. There's a tiny window, basically, that you can get all your fresh air or your light or your access to seeing things. But that's it. And you have this beautiful pan down to Ki-woo, which is Cho Woo-shik's character. On his phone, they're hacking their neighbor's Wi-Fi, and he loses the connection because the neighbor changes the password. So he's running around the house trying to connect to internet. And I find that's a very interesting thing to open with because, it just throws us right into their world. Firstly, they're in this, not so nice, basement, tiny apartment, and we're in their world now. We have left our worlds, whether it be American or South Korean or wherever we're watching this movie, and we're in that basement apartment with them. And I think the symmetrical shot that we have that comes in very even, very, close, in frame, proper, is so interesting to then be put in this messy, sprawled out, dishes everywhere, clothes hanging up everywhere, tiny apartment.
Literally sleeping on the floor.
Yeah.
Toilet on the ceiling somehow.
Yeah. Toilet on the ceiling.
Can you imagine using that toilet? It does not look like the most comfortable toilet.
No, it does not.
It does not. You literally have to bend over. Like anytime you use the bathroom, you're literally you're hurting your back.
Exactly, and I think that's that's another thing that he just immediately and like we were saying earlier, he has his way, he has his vision. Well, that's what he did to us. He just throws us in there. There's no seduction. There's no easing into it. It's direct. It's to the point, and the story is theirs. And that's that these people are, they don't have jobs. They're searching for what they can do. They're folding pizza boxes for a pizza restaurant, looking on a YouTube video at this guy who can, fold or, make pizza boxes really fast and stuff. And they're just trying to learn that on the quick. That's the thing with them. They're, I don't want to call them con artists, but they are, in the sense that they want to have these fast little tricks that can help them get anything or whatever they can do. And it's very interesting because, when the pizza person comes later on, they don't even take most of them. They're like, oh, we'll take, some of them. The rest aren't done right.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
that's interesting.
And that's what's really interesting about like they're always trying to look for a quick way to get one up. It translates the same way to the way that they all come into their jobs. It's these quick little turns that they try to make to try to get one up on everybody else. They're trying to trick everybody. They're faking it. They're faking everything in order to get to the next level of like society. You know what I mean? That's really what they're trying to do in every like aspect. And you can see this when like they quick cut when Ki Woo is going to the Park's house the first time. It's like a quick cut, like he's walking out and then all of a sudden he's walking up this hill. And he's like taking it.
And and I want to elaborate more on that, but first, also, kind of in the beginning too, when the exterminator comes and he's like fumigating the streets because they live in a rat infested area, and he's fumigating the streets, and they're like, uh-oh, should we shut the window? These fumes are about to come in. And the dad, he's basically like, no, it's a free extermination. It'll kill the water bugs. Let's let it happen.
요즘도 저런 걸 하네. 그러게요.
창문 닫아.
나도 봐. 공짜로 집안에 소독도 하고 곱등도 없애고.
그래. 요새 곱등이 너무 많아.
내가 아까 닫으라 그랬지?
닫을까요?
And they basically just stay in this apartment, and but I'm not even trying to laugh because it is such a, it's such a eye-opening shot because, wow, like these people really, they can't, I mean, just to get the bugs that they're willing, I mean, that's so bad for you to sit in a room that's getting exterminated. But not only that, they're all coughing and stuff, but the dad, he's just working. He's still learning.
He's the only one who doesn't cough. He's the only one who doesn't cough.
He's just flipping the boxes. He doesn't even care that he's just inhaling poison in his lungs, and it's a free extermination to him to get rid of these bugs. It's a quick solve. It's a finesse. It's a finesse. It's like little finesse, like you said but it's like little finesses to get one step higher, to help them one step higher. Going to your point, and this is a much deeper point on that, about the quick cuts to when he leaves the house to go to the Park's house for the first time. That's where we see this big transition, and I imagine that for me, I've never been to South Korea. I've never been to Seoul, so I don't know what life is like there. But to me, that's already a little taste, a little glimpse of what life is like there. That you have these, poor, lower income, rat-infested neighborhoods, and then these tight with these tight streets and these all packed together into one space, and then you have this immediate complete opposite juxtaposed to this, where it's these long, big, glamorous roads into these glamorous houses. you have Ki-woo leaving, and he's leaving down this tight road, and the camera pans on him, and then he's just immediately cuts to this big road, and he's walking up to this door, and we're like him because we're shocked. I mean, he's shocked going into this neighborhood. We're shocked watching him go into this neighborhood and see this. He doesn't see houses like these normally. He doesn't see this big space allotted for people to walk in normally. And I think that's a really cool entrance into seeing this other family, this rich family, that's a complete opposite of what we've just seen in the beginning.
Yeah. And what's really interesting about most of the sets are like they're sets. They're not like places that you could actually go, which is kind of crazy, you know, because like you look at this house and you go, oh man, this house looks like great. This looks like the coolest house, you know, that has like this cool lawn and all this like cool architecture and everything like that. And it's like Bong Joon Ho thought about that and he built that. You know what I mean?
He also went location scouting, and he looked at all these rich houses in South Korea, and there's definitely a lot of them. And he was like, no, fuck it, I'm gonna build my own, you know? Yeah. And that's really cool. Go on.
Yeah, it's like crazy. And that top floor isn't even there. Like they just put VFX in.
Yeah, here's a picture of the house that we're talking about. This is the Parks house. We're gonna put it up on the screen right now.
Yeah.
Look at that. I mean, that's so cool. You see, like, it's like green screened on the top of the house.
Yeah.
Because there is no second floor. They just built it, and that's really cool.
Yeah, it's crazy to think that, like, because in this movie, like, when you see the parks, like rich people in America, when you see their houses and they're like overly gaudy and whatnot, it's like when I see the Parks house, man, I'm like, yo, these people got class right now. Like, there's rich and then there's classy, and it's like the Parks like exude classy. They got the nice house, they got the nice architecture. They were like, listen, I could buy a big ass house or I can buy a nice ass house, and they were like, I want a nice house. All right. Yeah.
And even in the introduction of this house, I mean, what is the first thing that the housekeeper says? She says, "Oh, this architect Nanook or something like that. I can't remember the name off the top of my head. Yeah. He designed this house for himself, and then he moved away, and they bought this." And I mean, that's just to add to it, to add to the flavor of this house, which is a character in itself. And we both have talked about this on the podcast many times. We both love it when an object or a setting, whether in our last podcast we talked about New York City as a setting in Taxi Driver, this house is a setting in both of their houses, and both of their neighborhoods are settings that are characters in this film. And I think specifically the Parks house is its own human in itself.
Yeah, I mean, I'll definitely say that like the Parks house definitely gets more praise in this than the Kim's sub basement. Yeah. But I mean, you just look at how cool it looks, and you can't deny that, like, this is the showstopper in this.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And now
they have like a basement that they don't even know about in this,
Yeah, shelter.
Like,
shelter.
Yeah, shelter, like basically like a bomb shelter. They don't even know about it. How do you not?
Yeah. And I think we should, this is a great, I mean, us drooling over this house is a great way to segue into the role of, and this is a big role, but the role of class in this film. I mean, now we're going to get more into the role of class, as we said earlier, in all of Bong Joon Ho's films, because it's probably the biggest theme that he curates in his films. But I mean, the fact that we're already just salivating over this house and just in awe about its beauty is a perfect segue for us to go into class. And we're going to talk class about in all of Bong Joon Ho's films, but let's start with Parasite. I mean, we can segue in and out of it because there's so much to talk about with class, but I mean, so much juxtaposition between the two. It's like they live in two separate worlds, but they're in one city. They're in one city, and that's an interesting thing because when Mr. Kim, who was the dad of the Kim family, he, Kim Kai-take, I can't pronounce that correctly, but Ki-take, yes. He is, when he's on his test drive with with Dong Eek, who is the father of the Park family, Dong Eek asks him, "Oh, you seem to know South Korea well. You seem to know Seoul well, the city well." And he's like, "Anything below the 37th parcel, I know extremely well." Now, I don't know Seoul's division of its city, but I assume that Bong Joon Ho is saying that, yeah, he knows some of the areas, but not all of them. And that could be already kind of a glimpse at the classism that's even just set into the characters' minds.
Yeah. I mean, like the easy one, and the one that like we got to just get out of the way like right away, is like, obviously they live just below the surface. They can just barely see into like the sunlight and everything like that, and that's very symbolic of like where they stand. They're getting a glimpse at like what it's like to be above the middle class line. And obviously, like, you climb up to go into the Park's house. Like, that's the easy stuff that obviously we got to get out of the way, And what I think is really interesting, though, is like, if you notice the way they even eat in this film is very interesting. Like, food in this film is like very interesting to me, just because like you see the Kim family and they're eating at what literally, to me anyway, looks like a dinner at like a soup kitchen almost, but in Korea. It literally looks like that, because like I remember doing volunteer work at soup kitchens when I was in high school, and that's literally
You're talking
the way
about when they're at that buffet.
That's what it looks like. It looks like a communal area where you can just get like a quick, cheap bite to eat. You know what I mean? Whereas,
and they're overjoyed by going to eat, because that was the driver's buffet for drivers, chauffeurs, taxis, and I guess they had kind of finagled themselves in there, and they're overjoyed. They're like, "Look at all this food." Mr. Kim is like, "Look at this, Kiwoo, take more, and he starts giving him more off his plate, and they're like, "This is amazing, this is incredible." And you're very intuitive to bring up this point about food, because also in the beginning, and we'll get back to this about the stone later, but when Kiwoo's friend brings him this stone that's supposed to bring them wealth, material wealth, and is a great symbol that we'll get into it in itself, but Mr. Kim, Jessica, and Kiwoo are all very, very, like, "Oh, this is so nice of you. This is so great of you." But the mom, she's like, "Oh, food would have been better,"
Yeah.
And that's very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, and you juxtapose that to like the Park family, who, whenever you see them you see Mr. Kim shopping with Mrs. Park, and she's literally just like, their cart is like filled with food, and like she's like just like luxuriously shopping for like wine, and
just
like
taking
all this
wine
stuff.
bottles and just throwing them into the car. Like,
Oh
wine
yeah,
bottle.
I'll just take this, and I'll have this,
Yes,
and
yes.
we need this,
and even when they come home from the camping trip, and she's like, "Oh, we'll be home in 8 minutes. Make us this." What was it? Beef. It was like some beef dish.
It's called Ramdan.
Ramdan.
So, and there's no English translation to what it is, but it's basically like they just kind of like mixed up the word random, and that dish is like kind of like just mixing two good foods. You know what I mean?
It's just like meat. It's like beef and noodles, right? It's like
Yeah,
like that.
yeah. And the thing is the two noodles that they use are two different brands even that they use. And then so in Korea, like, local cuts of beef are considered like the high class like beef cuts, which, you know, like here I would say about the same thing. If you know, if you're getting like local meats, that's usually the better cuts, you know.
Mhm.
I mean, just not to go off on a tangent, but if you go to the Midwest, like the beef and the pork and the produce there, amazing, you know, compared to what it is on the East Coast or even on the West Coast. When you're living like on either side, your beef isn't quite as good. But the local beef, which is what it is what she's chopping up. And, you know, it's kind of like these two things that really shouldn't mix. That's what she basically made. It's like something that like you wouldn't make. You know,
Yeah.
it's very weird to make that. It's like a weird food.
Mhm.
Not to
And
say that it doesn't look good, because it looks hella good. But
yeah, I would eat that.
Yeah.
But in going back to this point that we were, I mean, just she basically, you know, and this is a big scene because this is a scene where they're fighting, you know, they're fighting with the old housekeeper and her husband who they found in this secret shelter,
Mhm.
and you know, it's all messy all over the place because they're just drunk and eating and just throwing food on the ground. And the Parks were on a camping trip, but it rained, so they were coming back. And she just calls. She's like, "Make me this meal." They rush to make the meal. They rush to clean everything up. They rush to put the old housekeeper and her husband down back in the shelter and hidden away. And they're all like frantically freaking out, running around, like, you know, scurrying around to get this done. And she gets home and she's like, I don't want it. You can have it. And the mother is the Kim's mother, who's the housekeeper for the Parks, is like, oh, can I have it? And then she's like, actually, I'll see if my husband wants it. He doesn't want it. They just have no regard for these things that the Kim family does. For them, it's just, oh, make it for me. I don't want it. It's okay. Who cares? Throw it out. Get rid of it. It doesn't matter.
야, 이거.
오셨어요? 다송아, 저거 봐. 우리 짜파구리 먹자. 짜파구리.
They're just so wasteful while everything is of value for the Kim family. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's a good segue into talking about the family that lives underneath the house. You know what I mean? And they really, I think that honestly, them kicking out the original housekeeper is one of the best one of the best like sequences in this entire film, when they're like getting the peach and everything like that. It's like it's so good. It's just such
Let's
a
show
great
that right
sequence.
here.
Yeah.
생긴 건 둥글둥글한데 그년이 속은 아주 능구랭이야. 어떨 때는 사모님 행세를 할 때도 있어, 지가.
맞아. 그리고 그 집 사람들 통틀어서 그 집에서 제일 오래 산 것도 그 여자야. 원래 거기에 살던 그 누구야? 그 건축가 남궁연자 선생. 그 집 가정부를 하다가 그걸 계속 이어서 다인의 가정부까지 하고 있는 거지. 남궁연자 선생이 이사 가면서 그 아줌마를 소개시켜준 거야. 박 사장 부부한테. 이 집 관리 정말 잘하는 아줌마니까 계속 쓰시죠 그러면서.
집주인은 바뀌었는데 가정부는 안 바뀐 케이스구만.
좋은 일자리 꽉 움켜주고 안 놓는 거야.
그런 여자를 도려내려면 우리도 뭔가 준비를 해야겠다.
그치. 계획이 있어야 돼.
복숭아 먹고 싶다. 난 복숭아 제일 좋아하는데.
깎아달라고 하지.
우리 집은 복숭아는 못 먹어요. 금지괄.
그러니까 다이한테서 들은 바에 의하면 그 아줌마가 엄청 심한 복숭아 알러지, 알레르기가 있다는 거야. 그 왜 복숭아 그 겉에가 완전 다 털이잖아. 그 털이 1m 근처에만 가도 온몸이 새빨개지고 호흡 곤란해, 천식에 아주 쌩 난리가 난다네.
Yeah, I mean that sequence right there is just so good. You know, I it just yeah.
It's a great sequence. I mean, you have this and the music, the everything, the way he's so vibracious with everything that he films. I mean, it's so coordinated everything. I mean, to having the little peach, to having this little shot of these peach fuzzes going into the air that causes this allergic reaction, the little sprinkle motion that she does with her hands while she walks by in this slow motion with this music and everything. I mean, it's fascinating and fantastic.
Yeah, and it goes back to them, like they're finessing everybody in this entire film. They're just like finessing here, finessing there. You know, it's just all finesse everywhere. You know what I mean? They're faking it until they make it. I guess that's what you got to do sometimes, man. I mean, and you know what's really funny
is, they never make it. They
never can. You know, and we'll come back around to that. But you know, like the thing is like when they're faking it, it all comes off of just one little opportunity. You know, as soon as the stone is introduced, their first like opportunity comes along, and after that they just go one after the other. You know, they're just finessing all these people.
Now I have a question for you while we're on the topic of the stone, because I don't think the stone is good for them, but do you think the stone is good for them?
I mean, it depends on the way you see it, you know? I mean, I think that at the end of the film they wind up off a lot worse than what they already were. So I see it as like, I don't know. I feel like it's bad luck for them. Even though the friend says that it's like supposed to bring like good luck and whatever, I feel as though it's very it's bad luck. Like it's got bad juju, man.
It reminds me of like a Greek mythology, like Siren. Like it's a good appeal from a distance, but then, you know, it's not so good. It ruins them. I mean, you say, I mean, to say that they're, you know, left, you know, worse off. I mean, completely they're left worse off. The daughter's dead. The husband is wanted for murder and has to hide in this shelter in the house. The son is like brain dead. And the mom is just, you know, like messed up. And it was them chasing the bag, and it was chasing the bag too much. And let's segue just quickly back to the scene where, you know, the old housekeeper comes back because, you know, they're kind of having a relaxing night. The Parks, which is the rich family, have left for the weekend to go camping, and they're like, okay, we can like settle in. They're all like living their day of rich, their day of wealth. The daughter, Jessica, she's in a hot tub in a bath watching TV. You know, they're all lounging about. The sun's outside in the garden in the sun, reading. The husband and wife are relaxing on the sofa. They all get drunk together. They're experiencing the wealth. And when they're brought into that, this is that moment of wealth. And then the old housekeeper comes back and she's begging for forgiveness because they find that the husband has been staying there. They totally don't. They totally like, oh, fuck you, you poor person. I'm going to rat you out. Because they have that power. Now they feel like they're on the other side. They finally get that moment that they're, look, and I don't want to go on a tangent. We will talk about this more too, but there is a line, the line of class that is not just in Parasite, that is in all of Bong Joon Ho's movies. This line, this precious line of class. You can be on opposite sides of it and talk together, but you can never step over it. Once you step over, you've broken a boundary.
Yeah, and you can't go back, almost. You know what I mean? And not only that, like, it's interesting that you say that, because even when the Kim family sees this, like, unfortunate, like, situation, you know, all the lady wants to do, really, is come back, get her husband, and, like, leave. Or, like is basically saying to them, like, hey, man, I need help. Like, I really need like, can you just, like, give me a break right now, help me out, and then, like, I'll be out of your hair. Because I don't think that
she calls her sis and stuff too. She's like, sis, sis, come on, we're cut from the same cloth. You know, we're both the needy. That's what she says. Go ahead and finish.
Yeah, no, I mean, and then so the Kims see themselves on like the upper part of this, and they're like, no, like, we can't. They don't want to help them out, you know. And, like, it's they're treating them the way the Parks treat the Kims, you know. They're treating, like, there's like so many lines to clash, you know, to class, like, and they don't realize that they could get even lower, to where, like, you don't even see any light, you know. You can just be, like, literally hopeless, you know. There's many people in this world that are literally they're hopeless, you know. They don't see any way out of their situation. They just see staying in their situation. They see, like, maybe one thing that could get them ahead, and even at that, like, they might not be able to achieve that. It might be, like, an extremely unrealistic thing to do, you know?
And who knows, in that one moment, if they had just been like, okay, that their story probably would have turned out a whole lot differently.
Yeah.
They probably, I mean, definitely they wouldn't have had this angry fight, and they would have died.
Yeah.
And I want to also talk about, like, this rule that Mr. Park has. He talks about it all the time. When Jessica leaves the underwear in the first driver's car, driver Yoon, and Mr. Park finds it, and he's like, wow, you know, this is messed up. This is messed up that my driver is having sex in my car. But you know what? The thing that gets Mr. Park the most is, like, why did he have to do it in my seat? There's a line even between the front and the back seat of his car for him. The front seat, oh, maybe Yoon would have kept his job if it had stayed in the front seat. But why did he have to come into my back seat, my passenger seat, and have sex? That's what disturbs Mr. Park. It's not the sex, really, in the car. I mean, it is, but it isn't. He specifically points out that, wow, the crossing the line was doing it in my seat. The crossing the line is never step past this line that Mr. Park has, that Korean society has, that all society has, not just Korean. There is a huge, not to get political or anything, but it's just the truth. There's a huge society line that is class, and you cannot cross it. And Mr. Park finds it disrespectful if you cross it. You know, that's you who are from this poor background disrespect me by crossing my line when I pay you so much, when I give you extra pay, when I, you know, give you a job security. Don't cross my line. But it's just like, man, that's another human.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Go ahead.
I mean, to add on to that point, like, at the end of the film, when they're talking and they're gonna do the little, like, Indian attack thing or whatever, their little, like, play kind of deal, and which is really funny because they literally throw this little party, like, on a whim. Basically, they're like, oh, party, yeah, like, let's just have, like, it's just like a little party, like, whatever. But if, like, the Kims were to, like, plan a party, they'd be like, all right, like, we're broke now, like, forever. But like, literally, Mr. Park literally says to Mr. Kim, like, oh, dude, don't worry, like, you're getting paid for this, like, don't worry. Like, he's like, you know, he does it because there's, like, a point when Mr. Kim literally is like, you can see in that moment that he almost feels like he's like with him, like he's like equal to him, like they're two people like experiencing this moment and like giving this kid this like special little moment for his childhood and whatever, this like little rich kid, this thing that he's like super fascinated in. And he's like, dude, like, oh, don't worry, dude, like you're getting paid for this, like don't worry. And he's like, he reminds him like, you work for me, remember that, like you work for me, I'm not your friend.
And it's really interesting, and I love that point too, because it's like, dude, you know, yeah, Mr. Kim is trying to be relatable, yeah, you know, he's a nice guy throughout the film. He never wants to pass that much harm until the end. He never wants to, you know, project harm onto someone. He wants to feel empathetic for them, feel for them, and try and understand them. And this is a moment where he's, you know, he's reaching past that line, and Mr. Park hates it. But it's a beautiful moment because, dude, he's saying, wow, you really do love your wife. Because he knew that Mr. Park was such business, so, you know, he's wealthy, but he's a businessman. He's in business.
Yeah.
But this is a moment where where Mr. Kim's finding this sentimentality in Mr. Park, and he's acknowledging it. And dude, like, what's wrong with that? What's so wrong? Oh, because he's poorer than you, because he works for you, he says something, you know, I can see why it can be taken as something, you know, malicious, but he's genuinely saying, wow, you do love your wife. And then Mr. Park's response to that is like, you know, Mr. Kim, you're getting paid extra for this. You know, this is your job. And I think that's a beautiful point for you to bring up, because, wow, I mean, man, he was being nice. He wasn't trying to say it in like, oh, you love your wife. He was trying to say it in, wow, like, appreciate the moment, appreciate the metaphor for it. And the Kims are, you know, at least the boys in the Kim family, both the son, Ki-woo, and the dad, Mr. Kim, are always, you know, saying, oh, this is so metaphorical. This is so philosophical.
Yeah, they always notice the little, like, the little things in life, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think that the performance of Ki Taek by Song Kang-ho, you know, it really is, like, to me, the standout performance of this entire film. You know what I mean? And he's like, so, to me anyway, he's very important Korean actor. You know, and there's a lot of very great Korean actors in this film. You know, Cho Woo-shik, who plays Ki-woo, is also in Train to Busan, and he's quite good in it too. You know, he plays like a young kid who's just trying to like help rescue his girlfriend. And you know, Song Kang-ho in this, I would kind of equate him to like the way Bong uses him in all his films is kind of like the way Quentin Tarantino uses Kurt Russell in his films. You know what I mean? Like, they're obviously friends. You know, he's obviously like always trying to think of like another role for him. You know, it's so like he's always rattling around in his head, and he's like, oh, when can I get another one for Kurt? You know what I mean? Maybe not in this one, but maybe the next one. I think that that's the way, you know, Bong thinks about him, because he's in Memories of a Murder. He's in The Host, which I just recently watched as well. He's in Snowpiercer. Yeah, you know.
Yeah, he's like the De Niro to Scorsese. He's like the De Niro to Scorsese.
Everybody's got their guy, you know. Like, there's always like, he's like, oh yeah, he gets what I'm doing. You know, I want to keep working with him because, you know, and he specifically wrote that role for Song Kang-ho. He specifically wrote that role. He was like, if he doesn't do it, then like I just won't do the movie.
And actually, Song Kang-ho is in another really good Korean movie called Taxi Driver. It's not the Taxi Driver Martin Scorsese. It's not even about that or related to that. But it's another really good Korean movie. And the role that the actor that I really like, well, actress, and I thought it was the role of Kim Yoon, Jessica, played by Park So-dam. I mean, she's a very young actress. This was her breakout role, and I thought she was fantastic. She tied the family together. I mean, one scene that really sticks out to me is the scene where she is interviewing for the job of the little kid, Park Da-song, the little kid in the Park family, to be his art therapist, art teacher. And she's outside the door with her brother, Chi Woo, and she's like, Jessica, Illinois, Chicago. She does that little game with her hands to remember the names. And that
아 잠깐. 제시카 외동딸 일리노이 시카고 거선배는 김치모 그는 이사촌.
it's just a really interesting thing, and I don't know, and I wonder if that was in the script or that was improvised. I'd love to take a look at that. If any of you guys know, you can drop it in the comments. We would love to hear. But I thought she was really good, and I thought she tied together the family. It was such an interesting character. Not only this, because, and they say this in the film too, they say, you know, oh, Jessica, you don't belong in this family. You belong in the wealthy. You fit in. None of us fit in to the wealthy, but you do. You're relaxing, watching TV, you know, in the tub. You're educated. You're able to be this person that we can't be. She never, ever has this smell that they all have.
Yeah.
It's referenced once, very, 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 you know, almost unnoticeably when Da Song says they all smell alike. But other than that, she individually never really gets called on having that smell. She's never suspected of being, you know, of this lower class. She's treated so highly compared to how the rest of them are treated by the Park family.
Yeah, I agree. And, you know, it's said that the reason why she dies, because she is the only one that is able to move into a higher, she would be the only one that would be able to move up in society, you know, from them. And for that, she gets punished, you know? No, none of the others could successfully do that. She's the only one that has that ability to actually do that. And for that, she's punished, you know? And in our society, like, it's funny because, you know, people that are from old money don't always accept, you know, people from young money, you know? You know, it's an interesting perspective on things, you know what I mean? Like, I bet you it's funny because, you know, people who are from like very like old money are people from like, or at this point, like people from like oil money and whatnot. But, you know, people that are from like a tech boom, like they're not as accepted, you know what I mean? I would assume. I have no idea. You know, we are not in that tax bracket, you know. To be in that tax bracket would be very different, but I bet you they still wouldn't even accept us, you know what I mean? Like,
no, I completely get what you mean. And yeah, I mean, I think she's a eccentric character and she's very dynamic. Another thing I want to tie into too, and I wondered, it's one of my favorite plays, theater plays, and that's Death of a Salesman by Arthur Miller. There's this one character, he's the second son, his name's Happy, and he always talks about these big dreams, having these big dreams. He's like, oh, I'm going to get out, I'm going to have this, I'm going to get this family money, I'm going to be this big person, but they never happen. And I want to tie that into to Ki Woo's character, because many a times Ki Woo is talking about these big dreams that he's going to have, these big success that he's going to have. He says, you know, when they forge the documents for him, when he's going on this job application, when he's going on this job to be the English tutor for the Park's daughter, him and Jessica forged these documents to say that he went to college. And he looks at his dad right before he goes to the interview, and he says, I don't look at these document forgeries as crimes. I look at this because I think that one day I will get into this university. And at the end of the film, you know, he says, I have this plan, Dad. You're stuck in there, but I'm going to be rich. I'm going to be someone. I'm going to be successful. I'm going to buy this house for you. And you're going to be able to walk out of this house and step and be free, and it's going to be your house. And little do we know, I mean, he doesn't.
Yeah.
He doesn't.
Yeah.
Still stuck in that basement house.
There's no way that he would ever be able to get out of that situation.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Maybe the sister could.
But she can't because she dies.
She can't because she's dead now. You know, it's very interesting. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's so metaphorical, as they would say.
Yeah. It's a powerful scene. And while we're like on the subject, I want to talk about like the handshake. So when after Mr. Kim and Mrs. Park go shopping together, they come back and Mr. Kim is like trying to get this old housekeeper out so he can bring in his wife to come in and replace her, which is part of their elaborate plan. But he makes up this story about that the old housekeeper has tuberculosis. And the wife of Mrs. Park is like, oh, don't tell my husband this, please, please, please. He can't know. He'll be so angry with me that I brought someone who was sick into this household. And they, swear each other to secrecy. And it's a close and another tight moment because she's in the sauna room and she has Mr. Park, come up and meet her there. And he like slides under and comes and he's like very close and very tight. And that's crossing the line again. Another example of crossing the invisible class line. And he's like right next to her and they make this agreement and he offers his hand to shake it and she doesn't want to shake it. She hesitates and then he kindly just puts his hand in and they shake hands. And immediately after she's like, did you wash your hands? And that's again like, wow. You can be like, revealing each other's secret, but there's a superficiality to that because, yeah, you're saying, you're trading secrets, but you still won't shake this guy's hand, and you do forcefully, and you're like, did you wash your hand? I mean, you still view this person as a parasite, as a rat, as this lower class person, and we're going to get into those words I just said because those are big words, and we have a lot to say on them, both of us, but, I mean, come on, like, how can you view someone this way? I mean, that's just what's so eye-opening, I think, about this film. And little scenes like that just explore it so well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that, like, them, like, the division of class in this film is just so clear. When the rain comes, they see it as, like, a little small inconvenience. Heck, they even Mrs. Park says, it's actually kind of good because, there was like a lot of dust particles in the air and everything like that. And it kind of like cleared that out. And it literally destroyed the Kim's house. Meanwhile, like it just interrupted like this little luxurious camping trip for them and for the Parks. And literally the kids' like little teepee tent is like still standing. His house is still, his little teepee is still standing. Meanwhile, the Kim's sub-basement home is like destroyed and literally everything they own is destroyed.
And we'll get to this in a second because this point you bring up is, again, one of the biggest parts for me in this film. But quickly, before we do, I just want to say, like, also, I think that's a testament, what you just said about, how they don't even notice that there's someone living in this shelter or that the shelter even exists. I mean, they don't even notice a lot of things. And I think, the lights, whenever Mr. Park comes home, the lights, one coming on as he makes a step, another light comes on. And then the third step, another light comes on as he walks up the house. That's the guy banging and like, pushing the buttons down there. And I think that's a very strong testament to wealth in society, in our world. You have all this money, you have all this ability to have things. You don't notice. You're so unaware and oblivious to the things you have, the things around you, that something like this ridiculous that someone is living in this shelter in this house that you bought that you don't even know this is possible. I mean, wealthy people, and this isn't to, say anything about wealthy people or anything like that, but there comes a time where you have wealth that you don't notice what you have and what's surrounding you because you're so oblivious to it. And I think that's a very, very interesting sentiment that Bong Joon Ho, exemplifies within this scene. And now let's segue into the rain. Thank God for the rain. This scene is, in my opinion, one of, if not maybe the most powerful scenes in parts of the film. They get back from their camping trip. We talked about the food already part, and now they're, this little 8-year-old wants to just, he's like, we didn't get to go camping, so I'm just gonna run out in the rain in our beautiful garden and set up this teepee and sleep in the teepee that night. And meanwhile, juxtapose this with, they're down, in their neighborhood, it's flooded. It's like a river down there. It's destroyed. Their house is getting destroyed. All their stuff is getting destroyed. They have to go sleep in a shelter. They're getting attacked by rain. But for this little kid, it's nice in their garden that has an irrigation system that they can drain, and it's nice, in their nice house. Let's go ahead and show this scene too, because we're also going to talk about the power of the stairs, the rain, the tunnels. All this plays into class. All this plays into cinematography that we want to talk about. But we're going to focus on the class part. We're going to show that right now. All right, so that's a really cool scene. And I mean, let's talk about it because, look, they finally escape. They escape the Parks house, after all this dramatic hiding and sneaking around and, trying to get out and maneuvering themselves around. They get out. It's pouring rain. They leave this rich house where the rain is wonderful, the rain is beautiful, and now they have to go deal with their reality.
And something that you should realize in that too is it's juxtaposed. The trip back down is so much longer than the trip up. Because they tricked their way up, but the descent down is so much longer to come. You know what I mean?
These beautiful shots, these beautiful, long shots of the stairs descending, the tunnels. It's like you're a rat in a subway. And yeah, I mean, leaving, this descent is harder, like you said, and we have this beautiful long shot of the stairs and descending down, and there's shadows in the nighttime under the streetlights as they go from a rich neighborhood into a poor neighborhood. The spaces get smaller. They're going through tunnels. It's like they're rats in subways. And I say this, and we're going to get into this later, this definition of Parasite. Why is the film called it? And but we'll get into that later. But this beautiful shot of them descending down these big stairs and covered in rain and disgust as they leave this upper class neighborhood. They go into this poor neighborhood and it's all flooded. It's all destroyed. Their neighbors are asking for help to get their stuff. They say, no, we got to go get our stuff. Their apartment is flooded. I mean, you know what I'm saying? It's such a difference in life, and it's so eye-opening for viewers because we don't see that on the day-to-day. Whatever society you come from, whether it's American, Korean, wherever you're from, there is this giant gap. And I think having this elongated staircase, these many tunnels, these many descents that you have to take to get to your place in life is a beautiful portrayal of class. What do you think?
It really just shows you how much further down they live. You know what I mean? That wide shot with the stairs is really what, and seeing them walk down all these crazy stairs, I was like, oh my God, man, that's crazy, man, to live that far under another person. These people must live up in the friggin' mountains, man. They must live way uptown. Whoa, you know what I mean? Obviously I've never been to Seoul and I don't really know what the layout is, but I'm sure it looks cool. And if there's cool staircases like that, I'd love to go see them. But the thing is that what needs to be said about the Park family is that, and it's not their fault that they don't realize all these things. You know what I mean? Excuse me. It's not their fault that they don't realize these things. You know, they just don't get it, because until you've gone without something, I feel as though, and this is like a personal stance, I feel as though until you've gone without something, it's difficult to know what it would be like not to have, like, to not have something. You know what I mean? Until you really, really experience it, you know, in life. Until you're broke and you literally don't have any money, and you're like, okay, literally this is how much money I need to live on right now. Like, this is like the only way I'm going to eat is if I save this amount of money. Or like, you won't appreciate food. You know, you won't appreciate having a roof over your head until like you have it taken away, you know, like properly appreciate it, you know. And that's the thing for the Park family, is that they have all these things, you know, and it just comes to them, you know. They'll definitely never ever have to worry about any of these things, you know. And so things don't even affect the Park family the way they affect the Kim family, you know. Like, they both have members of their family die, but you know that the Park family, it's like, they're just gonna like brush it off almost, you know what I mean? Like, they definitely just like, oh, let's just move to another house, you know. Like, they definitely have like savings and everything like that. And honestly, it seems like it's never really exactly spelled out for you, but it almost seems like Mr. Park, you know, he owned that business, so they're still gonna, you know, make money off of it.
Yeah.
It was just his running it, you know. And he seems like a savvy businessman. He doesn't seem like inept or in any way, you know.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And so, you know, it really speaks to the theme of class in this, that, you know, even having the same problem as a rich person would doesn't exactly equate to you having the same problem as them. You know what I mean? Like, I guess the way to think about it is like, if, you know, God forbid, I had my car break down, you know, that would be like a major issue for me. But for somebody with like money, they would be like, oh, okay, like, so I'll just figure out, like, I'll get a rental car, and like, and then I'll find like another car sooner or later, but like, I'll deal with this for now, you know. Like, it's like the way things affect different people in each way, you know, it's like night and day between the two, because they literally have a member of their family die who is somebody who could bring them to another level. And, you know, it just doesn't affect them the same way, you know.
Yeah, and I mean, I think obviously the kid and the Park family, you know, the husband dying is affecting them, but they can escape. They can be like, okay, we sell this house, we get the fuck out of here, we're done with this, we're moving to a different place, forgetting our life. The Kims, they can't do that. They can't just run away and be like, oh, okay, let's forget this, let's move far away from this. That's their reality now. And, you know, that's just another example of classism playing into this. In such a horrible event, the reaction, the aftermath is all going to be different. And I want to move in now and segue, before we move on, to talk about some of these themes that occur in other Bong Joon Ho's movies. I want to talk about the namesake, and also this representation of the Kim family that has stood out to me. And I say this lightly, I say this in not a way that is without heaviness towards it, but they are portrayed as, I mean, as the title is called, parasites, as rats, the way they move within the frame, the way that they're shot tightly, the way that, you know, every time they are sneaking around, or they're, you know, whether it's sneaking around the house, whether it's, you know, just running down during the rain, running down these tunnels and these staircases, they're their movement, their way of, just their way of being is similar to rats. And Bong, he says this too. He says, because the story is about the poor family infiltrating and creeping into the rich house, it seems very obvious that Parasite refers to the poor family. Now, he goes on to say that there is also a case for the rich family also being parasites, and there is, but I want to focus right now on the poor family. I mean, because he shoots them as if they're parasites, as if they're rats. We have every time that they're moving around, the camera is close, it's on them, it's following them, it's sneaking around with them. I mean, even when they're in the family's house and they're eating, I mean, they're making a mess. They're like throwing food around, they're throwing drinks around, they're spilling everything. In this fancy mansion, they're still the lower class. They're still, viewed this way in how they act and how they are. And it's a sad but very beautiful way of illustrating this class difference, I think, that Bong Joon Ho does quite beautifully. And now I think we should segue in to the relevance of class in Bong Joon Ho's other films, but also the importance of revenge, the parallels between having an item that is introduced to us that comes prevalent later on within the film. And I would like to start with revenge. In the film Mothered, which is 2009, Bong Joon Ho, it's the story of a mother and a son. The son is mentally challenged, and he, his mother is very overcaring for him. And in the first scene, the son gets hit by a car. He doesn't get badly injured. He gets a little dent, a little hit. But the revenge is that now he's got to go and, punch this guy's car, because why did you hit me with this car? And in Snowpiercer, which is 2013, Bong Joon Ho, they're in this lower class section of this train. Their revenge is getting to the first, and destroying anyone that has ever, looked down on them. And in Parasite, it's similar, as in it's this poor family infiltrating this rich family. And then we have the theme of go ahead.
The theme of revenge also comes up in The Host. In The Host, it's from 2007, I believe, Bong Joon Ho, and in that it's about this father's quest for revenge against this monster who took his daughter. He doesn't only want to find it's even said in the film, when a daughter is taken from or a child is taken from its parents, all you want to seek is revenge on the thing that killed your child. It's the motivation is revenge in that film. It's fueling the main character.
Yeah, I completely agree. And another point I wanted to bring out that I saw was, I think Bong Joon Ho likes to have this object that comes in the beginning, or in, sometimes the intro, sometimes, the beginning part of the film, that has a bigger, prevalence and a bigger part later in the film. And for that, it's, this intro shot in Mother in 2009. The first shot we see is this landscape shot of our main character, who is the mother. She's played by Kim Ha-ya, and she did a fantastic job. But she's in this landscape shot, walking in the field. She gets closer to the camera and she starts dancing. And later we see the same shot after she discovers who she thinks is the actual murderer. Her son gets accused for murder, but she's searching for the actual murderer, and she burns his house down. And then she walks, and then we see this replicated shot in Snowpiercer, this object of the match that is first sparks Song Kang-ho's cigarette, and he gives it to this child, then comes later to be the spark for the fire that starts this rebellion, and the spark for the dynamite that blows open this door of this train that basically stops this train. And in Parasite, I think the object is the stone that is given them, that is supposed to have wealth and meaning and material success and wealth and success, and later is used to murder Ki-woo brutally. And is also cycled throughout the film. What did you think about that?
Yeah,
about this?
I think with this repetition theme, especially in The Host, I mean, you see things repeat with, like, so the movie is about, like, this family that owns a little, like, concession stand, is the best way to describe it in American terms, you know what I mean? It's a concession stand, and it's, you know, a father, like an older father, then he has two sons and a daughter who are, like, you know, in their mid-20s, early 30s, one of which is Song Kang-ho, and he has a younger daughter who gets taken from him by this monster that's living in the Han River, you know, and it's this, like, big scene at the beginning of the film, and, you know, so there's this moment where Song Kang-ho and the person who plays his daughter are watching this archery like match. I'm not really sure what they would call it in archery terms, but I'm going to say match, you know. And it's the daughter who is it's the daughter of his father, so his sister, like, in this archery match, and she hesitates to shoot, and she runs out of time, and she's like this, like, master archer, and it comes in later in the film, she hesitates to, like, shoot at the monster right as it's running at her at a certain point, and then at the end of the film she just takes this, like, arrow and basically blows up the monster and doesn't even hesitate, you know. It's like she overcomes this, like, fear that she had in her, you know what I mean? Even for Song Kang-ho's character at the beginning of the film, he needs, like, help to try to save this, like, one guy, because he picks up this, like, sign, and then later on in the film he picks up the sign and, like, smashes the one end down that has, like, concrete on it, and then he, like, whams it against the side of, like, a pillar underneath this bridge, and he just has this pole, and he wasn't able to do that before. He just, like, summons the strength within himself at the end of the film, and he kills the monster, you know. Like, the repetition in his films, he loves putting little things in the beginning that you don't realize are going to be so important, you know, later on, to be like, see, like, I put this in there for a reason. It wasn't just there. They didn't just so happen to be like an archer or whatever it might be, you know. He loves doing stuff like that, you know.
Yeah, definitely. Before we wrap, just Insider.com ranks Parasite number 3 of the best Bong Joon Ho movies, citing that Mother is number 1 and Snowpiercer is number 2. I'm a little iffy about this list.
I disagree.
I disagree too. I think Parasite is definitely number 1. I know you haven't seen Mother yet, and I
watched the beginning
yet.
of it. I watched the beginning.
Yeah,
of it, but
and neither of us have seen Memories of Murder, which I plan to watch very soon, and I'm sure Ryan does as well. But from what we've seen, for me, I would say Parasite is number 1. I would say Mother is number 2, and a very close 2. again, I know you haven't seen it yet. And then I would say Snowpiercer would be three.
It's on the list. It might not be 3. I mean, 3 is up for debate if you ask me. You know, I just think that what needs to be said here is that I think this past year, you know, with Bong winning Best Picture and Best Director, which, by the way, you know, I know this paints me as a little bit of a degenerate, but I gambled on that and I won big on that. It was a good. My only regret is that I wish I would have put more on it. You know, I think Bong is here to stay, man. I think also that this is going to open up people's eyes. You know, obviously you and I watch foreign films before this, but I really think that this is going to open up people's minds to, you know, watching foreign films more, you know, because and I remember both of us going to see 1917 because I really think it's hard to mention the Oscars without mentioning this past year's Oscars without mentioning 1917 in this race for Best Picture. And if I remember correctly, they only had one technical nomination, right? And maybe a couple technical nominations, and they had the Best Picture nomination, and that usually doesn't happen. Usually when you have a Best Picture nomination, you get a bunch of others too, you know? I mean, and then it's a bad sign if you're not getting other nominations. And I remember when you and I had gone and seen 1917, we were both like, this might be the film because it came out right at the right. It was just it had all these things going for it. And it was just at the right time, you know. And it's funny because, you know, we watch the Oscars every year and we expect something different to happen. We expect something that we don't expect to happen, and it finally does, and you're like, oh, the right movie got picked, finally, you're like, what, no way. So this is so great. I'm so happy for this little film that I've seen, and I hope more people go see it. I really hope people go and see this film, you know what I mean? I think you're doing yourself an injustice if you don't. You know, take it from me, I've rewatched both 1917 and this film 3 times each, and I can say that this film holds up so much more. You know, if you're this is not to take away from 1917. I love that film, but I will probably never rewatch it, probably until I have kids. You know what I mean? And I'm showing my son or daughter, oh, you got to see this war movie. It's just so cool. You know, if you're not seeing that in a theater, I feel it really takes away from from it. You know what I mean? That's a film that you see in a theater, like a Dunkirk or something like that.
Yeah, and listen, I was with him when he saw 1917, and I remember how amazed he was coming out of the movie theater. And I want to segue quickly back to your point, because number one, I think this is one of the best Oscar years we've had in a while, in a little bit. And I want to, you know, I'm a lover of foreign films, and you know, Bong Joon Ho won Best Director, he won Best Picture, he won Best Foreign Film. In both all 3 of those very competitive races. You know, there was in Best Foreign Film, I saw 3 of the 4 films that were nominated for Best Foreign Film. It was Parasite, it was Pain and Glory, which was Pedro Almodovar's great film with Antonio Banderas and Penelope Cruz. Hopefully we can do a podcast on that one day.
Somewhere down the line.
Because I love that movie, and I think it's close up there with Parasite. Les Miserables, the French selection this year, which was fantastic. And I didn't see this, but a Polish film, I'm blanking on the name right now. What it was called.
Yeah, it's okay. We can put it in the bottom
Yeah,
right here. We'll put it in the bottom right here.
Yeah.
make Chris look stupid.
You
Chris will make
me
himself look stupid
because
doing
I
that.
did want to see it, but you know what? I don't even think I'll make myself look stupid. It's called Corpus Christi, and there's also Honeyland, which I didn't see or even really hear. But anyways, to have such a big, I mean, if Parasite wasn't, if it didn't kill like the way it did, and it didn't differentiate itself from these films, I mean, this is a hard category to win this year. I mean, there were so many good ones. And in Best Picture, in Best Director, there was Tarantino, Scorsese, Sam Mendes, Todd Phillips, all up against Bong Joon Ho.
And Bong won, baby.
And Bong won. And in Best Picture, you had 1917, you had Joker, you had Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, The Irishman, Marriage Story, Jojo Rabbit, Little Women,
I think
Ford
it's
versus Ferrari.
I think
he
it's
beat
safe to,
these films.
I think it's safe to say, honestly, that any one of these films could have at least been a top 3 contender or a top 2 contender in any other year. I believe
100%.
I believe that I've seen every one of them on the list except for Little Women.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, I love Ford versus Ferrari. Great film. It definitely, I think a lot of people haven't given it the time of day, you know. I need to give Little Women the time of day at some point. I don't know when that will happen. Probably on HBO. Let me just say it. You don't want to look like an asshole.
I don't care. I look like an asshole. It sucks. It sucks. It's terrible. It's not like the original screenplay. I'm not going to cut this. I'm going to keep this in. It sucks. It was terrible. My mom, who loves Little Women, who loves, the play, and I've read it, and I've seen the older adaptations. This is terrible. It's just a Hollywood-made version of it. And I respect all the actors.
I mean, I haven't.
Listen, dude, we're an open podcast. If we think something sucks, we're gonna say it. We're not gonna hide back.
I haven't seen it, so I have no opinion on it. But I've seen every other one of these films on this list, and I think that literally any other one of them in any other year could have been like a contender. Minus Joker. I mean, I could go on and on about my opinions on Joker, and I obviously I haven't rewatched it. We can say that for another podcast. We're probably running a little long at this point anyway. But like I'm saying, any one of these in any other year could have honestly at least been a contender for Best Picture. There was a long time there when we thought Marriage Story was going to be the winner. There was a long time there, but I mean, it's not necessarily that it deserved it.
No,
yeah, I'm saying that, like, given everything about it, you know what I mean? I'm not going to say that I thought it was like the winner at any point, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah. And I mean, we've run long and it's time to wrap up, but there's one last thing I want to say, because we've talked so much about Bong Joon Ho. And, I feel like we owe it to him. He said, if you just were to get over the 1-inch bar that is subtitles, you would find a whole new world in cinema, and there is nothing truer about it.
Yeah.
Foreign films have such a magical way, and they're in a different language. Yeah, you have to read. Yeah, you have to pay attention. But honestly, you should be paying attention in a movie.
You know what? If you can't get past that 1-inch little bar at the bottom of your screen, honestly, to me, it weeds people out that you want to talk to. You know what I mean? Like, that you want to talk to about film. Because honestly, like, if you can't just get past that, you know what I mean? It's just like, dude, like, what, like, you're denying yourself so much. And not only that, like, I was talking to my brother about this earlier. Like foreign films are killing it lately. Killing it. You know what I mean? American films, like, they just do not compare at all at this point. You know what I mean? They're coming out with, like, a real original stuff. And I really believe that Parasite is, like, one of the first original films in a very, like, long time. Like, this is, like, an original thought. There might be, like, some play somewhere along the line that is, like, that is very, like, similar to it. But I've never seen, like, a movie similar, even, like, in plot or anything. Besides the way, like, Bong Joon Ho makes a movie. Obviously, like, the way he makes a movie is, like, similar. And we've said that. But
we're definitely gonna definitely going to show and, talk about more foreign films because we want to open our audiences up and we love them. And to pay honor to Bong Joon Ho, we're going to drop a list after this video of both on our Instagram page, but also on the end of this YouTube video will be a list of some great foreign films from all different countries you should check out. Yeah, I mean, this was we went over time, but you know what? Honestly, for Parasite, it's worth it. Thank you to you guys for listening. Please like, subscribe. You should just subscribe.
Yeah, go down there, like, subscribe. We'll have more and more coming.
Yes.
We are dedicating ourselves more and more to this every.
I'm feeling groovy, baby. I'm
feeling
I can
real
make
good
another
about
podcast
this.
right now.
We could. Honestly.
I watched 3 Korean movies today. That was my day today, and I'm ready to roll. Thank you for tuning in to another edition of RC Cinema. I'm Chris. That's Ryan. Great to have you listening. Take care.
아, 잠깐. 제시카, 외동딸, 일리노이, 시카고. 거선배는 김치모, 그는 이사촌.